Welcome to True Sound Radio. I'm your host, Phoenix, and today we're coming at you once again virtually to talk with talented local house DJ and producer, Xander Rose. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Of course. So when did you know you wanted to be a producer?
Yeah, so basically the after the first show I ever went to, I really hated electronic music when I was a teenager. I used to call it like blender music, and because I think I just listened to really aggressive dubstep I had heard. But I went to Contact 2015, and it was during Oliver Heldens where I was like, wow, this music can be actually, very melodic and have a lot of substance to it, and obviously people enjoy it a lot. So I pretty much decided right there and then that I wanted to become a producer.
That's amazing. It must be really sad for you that we didn't have contact this past year then.
Yeah, well, I think I've probably gone to maybe three or four of them over the years. And obviously it had a massive impact on me, being the reason I became a producer. I went to Shambhala for the first time in 2019, and that's kind of spoiled any other festival for me now. Now that's my new bar, right? So I go to something else and I'm like, not as good as Shambhala. So I don't miss it too much. I miss Shams more.
That is very fair, yeah. My ticket is going to be put to next year anyways as well. So yeah. I'm looking forward to the next Shams as well. You have a cool sound. So you label it as aggressive house music. It reminds me a bit of producers like Bloodtone, DLMT, other grimy type of house artists. So if you could dissect your sound design, how would you describe the signature sound that creates your personal style?
Yeah, so I think I'm still in the process of developing it for sure. I think it probably takes until you have like an actual big hit to really understand what you're doing with your sound. But obviously I've been developing it, over the last 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years. And I would say it shares a lot of inspiration from the Confession style G house bass house sound. So it's a lot of focus on like drum programming, having really saturated, compressed drums and synths. It's not as aggressive as, say, a Habstract or a Jaws, those more firmly, like I used to avoid the label bass house because I saw it as being associated with a particular style of bass house that I don't really enjoy too much. Whereas I'm more like the G house Confession style stuff. So that's kind of how I would describe it, is influenced by like the No Redemption EP by Shami and Mala, like Low Down, Masteria, a lot of that kind of crossover stuff between bass house and G house.
That's great. Yeah. That's really an up and coming sort of sound, I find. I used to live in Toronto, and a lot of the Toronto guys have that sort of grimy sound to their music. So I personally love it, but it's a subjective thing, I'm sure. What kind of mood are you trying to create when you write or remix a track? Like, what do you want your audience to be feeling when they are listening to it?
Yeah, I think it depends on the track for sure. And you probably noticed that with the variety that I have in some of my songs. So I have some that are more chill, like my Lemonade remix, or even like the Billie Eilish bootleg I just put out recently. It's very high energy, but it's not as like grimy and distorted and stuff as my single, like my originals that I've been releasing. I think for me, and this is kind of a meme with my friends, but when I'm at a show and someone plays a song where the drop is unexpected, very high energy, but still very danceable. And this is one of the reasons why I was saying earlier, I don't like the most extremely aggressive bass house, is because I find a lot of times it sacrifices danceability. Whereas I want, when that drop hits and it's a very unique sound, like Lowdown is really good. I really love Lowdown for that. Or No Thanks, they do a lot of drops that take you off guard, but are still very danceable, high energy, and really cool. When I hear that in a club, I'll like turn to my friends and go, whoa. And so it's kind of like a meme with us that if I scream whoa, that means, that's the song that I'm aiming for with my own music. So I want to elicit that reaction from people.
Awesome. So actually, you just mentioned your recent release, Party Party with Seb C, which was just released this Thursday. So what has the response been like so far for the track, and what can you tell us about it musically?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting release because I think we finished it in, I want to say, the fall of 2019, and it was originally going to come out April 2020, and then COVID happened. So, well, originally it was going to come out on Brooklyn Fire, which is Tommy Sunshine's label, and then they launched Speed House Movement from House of Panda as an imprint of it. So originally got delayed a couple of months for that, and then COVID happened, and then they said, let's delay it to April 2021 because COVID will probably be over by then. And of course it's not. Wishful thinking. Because we're like, it's kind of a festival track, right? So we should probably save it until there's festivals, and hopefully they can have fun with it in Florida, but the rest of us are gonna have to wait a bit longer. But what I'll say about it is it was an awesome experience working with Seb C. We've been friends since I started as a DJ. Like, even though I've always been making house music, I was DJing hip hop shows for probably the first year and a half, 2 years, because that's all that would book me. And so I met Seb through that, and we've been good friends since. So it was awesome to work with him on that, and also just to get Tommy and House of Pandas like direct support and communication on it. Like, it's a really cool experience to be at the point in my career where I have the personal emails of like legends, they'll talk to me, and that's just a really cool feeling. So getting that support has been incredible.
Going off of what you just said there about legends, who is one artist in the business that you draw inspiration from?
Yeah, I would say Masteria right now. We actually kind of have a mentorship-mentee relationship right now, which is on the note of DLMT. Actually, the first time I ever connected with Masteria was because I sent in my song "Give It to Me Like" to him, and DLMT, Dan, was like a guest on his feedback stream, and during that stream they were like, oh, we're gonna play this out at festivals and stuff when they come back, and like they had nothing but good things to say, and they asked me to send it to them with the download. So that was where I started that relationship with him. But I find he does a really fantastic job of just pushing himself to be as creative as possible, making new sounds on every single track, and like he never half-asses any of his tracks. And I found for a long time that was my issue, was I found the tracks where I was super inspired and really pushing myself to do something new and unique. Those were always my best. And then the ones where I was just trying to recycle old ideas or do the same thing again, those were my worst ones that I like would regret making and releasing. So I really look up to him for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was doing some digging on your website earlier, a few days ago. And also I was wondering, you do some vlogging and reviewing, and I'm wondering how that came about and what you enjoy about it, because it's a little bit unusual to see a DJ and producer who also does vlogging and reviewing. So I'm just curious about it.
Yeah. So the direct reason was I was in a class in university where we had to start a blog, and I asked, could I start a vlog, because I was already posting up my DJ like mixes, and they were doing pretty well. So I was like, well, I kind of already wanted to do this like more content marketing, explaining things, that kind of stuff on my YouTube channel anyways. So I used that as an excuse. The further back reason is because I used to be like a video producer for a video game website. So I already had experience with it, and I like talking to camera and all that stuff. So it was just kind of in line with my experience and what I wanted to do.
That's cool. Off the top of your head, what would you say your favorite review is on your website? Maybe that you're...
Yeah, so I mean, the reviews, like I only did a couple of those. that was at the start of that semester, I think,
Okay.
because it was, I don't know, that was just one of the ideas. I think we actually had to do a review or something for the course. So I don't really like doing reviews, and I don't really care about them that much.
Okay, so then in that case, which is your favorite vlog episode, so that our viewers can maybe go check it out?
Yeah. So, I mean, personally, one I put a lot of effort into that I think I would want like every DJ to look is the ones about basic music theory. I have a choral and jazz background before I became a producer. And so like I have a very strong music theory background. And to me, it was shocking how little music literacy there was in electronic music. So I mean, if you're asking what's my best performing videos, it's definitely not those two that I made, but those are the ones where I feel like they're essential. And so I wish that they were more popular. Like, you know, my how to make G house video is like the most popular one, but because unfortunately, producers aren't looking at how do I get basic music theory, which they should be. But
no, absolutely. I worked with a few DJs when I was living in Ottawa, and their understanding of, typically if you don't have any music background, their understanding of the theoretical component is whatever, you know, the DAW they're using or whatever, that kind of linguistic thing. It's not really like the chordal structures and stuff. So I totally get that.
It's like BPM, and then they'll learn what keys are, but they might not understand the theory behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Also on your website, you have some tutorials. So the how to make G house, obviously, is one you just mentioned. You know, DJ and producing are traditionally, I find, a trade type skill where you find someone to shadow and then you learn from them. A lot of people read books, you know, but there's also, if you have the money, there's the educational institutions. But I'm just curious what your own personal learning process was like, learning to work with the DAW and also DJing, and what inspired you to give back to your community after that.
Yeah, so I'm other than my music theory background, which was like from formal education, in terms of actual like electronic music and DJing, it was all YouTube video, self-taught, or asking a friend I knew who was a DJ to show me how to DJ, especially because like I see myself as a producer, and I'm much more interested in making music than DJing. Like DJing's fun too, but I really had to lean on people to teach me how to DJ, because like I bombed my first performance. It was like terrible. So but yeah, it was all self-taught off of YouTube, and it was my instinct initially, because I self-taught playing guitar when I was younger and video editing, and just anytime I've wanted to do like pick up a skill or whatever, I've always just been like, I'll just watch YouTube videos on how to do it. So that was my initial instinct. And in terms of why I wanted to give back, I noticed there was not very many G house videos on YouTube when I was trying to learn how to do it. So that was one of the reasons. And I would just make other tutorials about things that, like, solutions I found to problems that, again, there wasn't videos on it. I think my second most popular video is about having the right sample setting on your samples so that they don't get warped when you automate. It's like the most specific, like weird particular thing in FL Studio that I was like, there's no tutorial on this, and it's like such an easy solution. So I made a video on it, and it's like my second most popular one.
Well, that's great. You obviously found a niche for people who were looking for that solution as well. So that's great. Thank you for giving back, by the way. What has it been like trying to maintain a musical career and presence through a pandemic? It must be tough.
Yeah, so I think there's the very negative thing is it's hard to like visually promote yourself if you're not playing shows, because people don't know the difference between a DJ and a producer. So if you're not posting pictures of you DJing, then I don't know, they don't think you're making music or something. Like, I don't really understand what people think about it, but you need to be posting pictures of you performing to legitimize yourself as an artist. So that's obviously been really hard. But the total upside has been, you know, the focus and time to produce, right? And like I said, that's the part that I love about it. That's my favorite part. So I've really appreciated being able to take the time to just focus on the craft, focus on getting as good as I possibly can, making as good as music as I can, and connecting with, kind of taking a break from focusing on how can I get people out to my shows and all that kind of stuff, to how can I just make connections with really great artists and make my music better.
Have you been releasing steadily throughout the pandemic, sort of just to keep yourself present, or are you just mainly like taking a step back and really working on your music?
Well, yeah, I have been releasing, but you got to consider the fact that releases, there's about a year-long delay normally from when you finish a song to when it gets released, because you're going through the label signing process. And it can be even longer. So like with Party Party, it's like way longer than that. So so the thing is, like, I got a ton of momentum going right into COVID of getting a lot of tracks signed to labels. So I mean, I don't regret it, and it worked out fine and stuff. Obviously, it would have been awesome if shows were there and I could have gotten direct support from artists playing my songs out at shows that were released on these labels, because they've all been like bass house kind of banger tracks. So obviously that would have been better. But thankfully I've been able to release consistently because I signed all these tracks before COVID happened. And it's more so been like during COVID itself, where I've released like that Billy bootleg, which was produced during COVID, or the occasional like remix contest entry where its release was more close to when I actually finished it. But it's been more like the last 6 months where I've focused a lot more on really honing in on my craft, making quality stuff, so I can sign to even bigger labels now.
That's amazing. I'm excited for the product of that 6 months of really honing. Can you tell us anything about any releases that we might, when the releases from that period of time might come true?
Yeah. Well, so I have one coming out April 30th, actually. And awesome. This is the first time anyone's going to be hearing about that. But yeah, that's with an artist called Ill45 from LA.
Okay, cool.
And he's got like tons of releases on really big labels. And his latest track, Saito, was put in Operator, which is like the Spotify Tech House official playlist. So that one's doing super, super well. But yeah, that's on 40 Ounce Cult, which is Dak Janiel and Wednesday's label. If you're familiar with them.
I am. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that comes out at the end of the month. Nothing else is confirmed, or I don't want to say, but
right, that's fair.
But yeah, that's the next one.
Okay, great. That's soon. That's great. It's great to hear. What is your hope for the future of the music industry in the next 2 years, from now? And what can fans do to support their local scene or their local artists once it's safe to do so?
Yeah, so I think in terms of what I want to see change is, and I've just been having this conversation over the last like week or so with a bunch of my artist friends, but it really feels like the lottery with streaming right now on how your track performs. And that lottery is whether or not you get put into Spotify editorial playlists. So ones like Bangers or Housework or et cetera, right?
Yeah.
Obviously Mint is reserved for like the most famous DJs, but the other ones that are about subgenres, there's just not any consistency in terms of quality or what factors are going into it. Like I've had songs feature in Bangers that I consider worse than my more recent work, and then my more recent work won't be featured. So it's like really strange, and like those releases weren't on labels, but then these ones will be. So I think that really needs to change, because it's just it creates a situation for smaller artists where you have songs, like in my case, where you'll have songs that have 60,000 plays, 25,000 plays, and then 1,000 plays, right? And it looks really weird. So that needs to be figured out. Like there needs to be some complete overhaul of how playlisting works for streaming. In terms of how to support local artists, you don't need to wait for shows to come back. Obviously, going to shows is good to legitimize them, and it makes them look better to booking people and whatnot. But if an artist is concerned about actually making it, what they care about is the performance of their music on things like streaming, getting recognition from bigger artists. So supporting their releases and putting them in your playlist that you actually listen to regularly, like those are the two biggest things that you could do. So adding it to your Instagram story, things like that, like that matters more than supporting their local show that they're playing at.
That's interesting. I actually didn't know that. So that's great. I will do that right away, actually. What are your top 5 desert island tracks and why?
Okay, yeah, I'm glad that you showed me this beforehand, because I had to think about it pretty heavily, and I'll surprise you by only including one electronic song in this. Oh,
that's
actually,
fair.
I might have to cut the Shami song, actually, because I just remembered that Justice exists. I think Justice is my favorite.
Okay.
My favorite, my favorite electronic artists, I guess. Phantom Part 2 by Justice. That's going to be the first one.
Good.
So sorry, Shami, you're out. And then the next ones will surprise you. Banana Pancakes by Jack Johnson. Okay. Huge Jack Johnson fan. That was why I learned how to play the guitar, was so that I could sing along to Jack Johnson songs as a teenager. I'm Back by Eminem. Okay. I was just listening to that today. Banger. Another curveball, The Scientist by Coldplay.
Oh, okay.
And then The Recipe by Kendrick Lamar.
All really, really great artists and tracks. So I will give that to you.
I have an eclectic taste in music from my childhood, obviously.
Well, yeah, you said that you have a choral and a jazz background. Is that from your time as growing up and your musical education then?
Yeah. It was in like high school. I went to a public school, but it was like weirdly music focused. Like everyone was in choir and band. And I think we had like 400 kids at our high school, but we had 8 choirs and 8 bands. Like it was crazy. And so we got lots of really awesome opportunity, and like we were competitive level winning like awards and stuff like that. We sang in Carnegie Hall. So yeah, I got a wide range. My dad has a really wide eclectic music taste, so I got to listen to all different kinds of stuff growing up.
That's cool. That's so it's genetic then. You're eclectic.
Yeah.
Do you have any shout outs to anyone in the local industry you think deserves some love and recognition? And is there anything else you'd like to say to the True Sound following?
Yeah, so I'm going to shout out my roommates because I do live with 4 other DJs. So that's Ratman and Bobbin, Hippie Flip, and Dirty Kurt. Cool. Obviously, I want to shout out Seb C. Both congratulating him on Guala. It got played out by Tiesto, which was nuts. And also, obviously, for Party with me. So and then the final one I just wanted to shout out there, because I feel like he deserves as much recognition as he can get, is Carbon. I've been a massive Carbon fan since Low came out, and I stan him all the time. So I want to make sure that he gets the recognition he deserves, because he makes some of the best music coming out of Vancouver right now.
That's amazing. Thanks for shouting those people out, and thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome.